Communication Minister Mondli Gungubele has revealed that the national analogue switch-off will take place over 2 stages. Legal wrangling has postponed the already delayed process, despite broadcasters having turned off analogue receivers in some provinces previously. The digital migration process, which is expected to free up much-needed spectrum, is now expected to be finalized by December next year.
We immediately switch off analog services above 694 MHz band to release spectrum for other telecommunication use, and the set date for this step is the 31st of July this year. Step 2, temporarily accommodate some of the high populous areas below 694 MHz and switch off within a given period, and the set-aside date for this step is 31st December 2024. A 2-step approach towards analog switch-off is deemed to be a viable approach for the industry. This approach is accepted to be a win-win approach that will enable analog switch-off progress, release spectrum, and allow key stakeholders to recover from post-COVID economic decline and load-shedding impact.
For more on the story, we're joined by technology communications specialist Nazareen Ebrahim. Nazareen, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. I suppose it's worth talking about the fact that a deadline 12 times missed, and yet again, we're having difficulty with sticking to those dates, at least from a government point of view, that keep on being set. What are the challenges that are making this almost near impossible?
Good evening, Kathy. Thanks very much for having this discussion. It's important because the question you ask is, why do we have so many challenges? I think primarily the most primary challenge we're having is the very frequent change or high churn of ministers that take up the portfolio of digital communications, or communications in general, making it difficult to keep or stick to a policy plan. And as a new minister takes office, I can imagine picking up what has been a legacy heritage of work outstanding or status that needs to be given, like it would be in any organization or as an entrepreneur or a business working on a project. You've then got to transition on what has been happening. Are the policies the same? Can we move forward? The changing rate of inflation, what are people thinking about now? As well as the fact that I was listening to Minister Gungubele speaking there, and I'm looking at the press statement now that I've received from the spokesperson at that department. One of the comments that he made was, we're running public education programs. If I look at the last part of the statement, throughout the implementation of the program, public awareness programs are conducted through multiple platforms to ensure the digital migration message reaches South Africans irrespective of where they are. Now, again, I'll say this, Kathy, with the change in administration every so often, how consistent can these public education programs be? Is the messaging the same, considering that policy will also change when new administrators come in? And this is something we have to think about. But on the ground, with communicators like ourselves, including people who are running civil society organizations, it's important for that conversation to continue happening on that ground, because we do, as South Africans, want to bridge the digital divide.
Nazareen, the difficulty with something as simple as what you've highlighted, public awareness campaigns. I remember budgets being set aside under Nomvula Mokonyane when she was the communications minister to run those very same public awareness campaigns. We were dealing with the issue of set-top boxes that, again, was supposed to have been mostly done under her tenure. It's something that had to be restarted from the beginning, and part of this deadline extension includes people still needing to come forward and apply, at least those that need to be subsidized, for the set-top boxes. It's something that government had committed it would complete in the previous financial year. So one has to really wonder, what are some of these logistical challenges, and are they really challenges, or are these delays beneficial for some people?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I want to speak from the perspective, again, I'm speaking from the perspective of a media and technology observer on the landscape, working in the industry. Politically, and if we understand the state of where we are socioeconomically, we understand that the challenges that we are having being impacted by with the delays, continual delays, and you've said it, Kathy, 12 times already, 13 years later, we were expected, if the International Telecommunications Union put forth a mandate, move in 2010 to working on digital terrestrial television, because it frees up the spectrum, it allows telecommunications companies to provide connectivity access, we would have gone on that journey. These delays are frustrating for us as South Africans because we look to government to look for our best interests. The challenges, again, I will say, are if we're having continual churn of ministry, administration, red tape in terms of policy and what it means for people to have collective consultation, and if here in the statement it says there's only been 17 responses put forward, I'm not sure how to read that correctly. Have 17 responses been put forward by whom, and what were the nature of those responses? Also, who were the organizations that put forward? We understand that there are free-to-air channels like Cape Town TV and others who have spoken very publicly about the challenges that they faced, considering that people who have access to this get certain types of information. And there are a number of issues here that are worrying. But Kathy, for me as a media technology communicator, as an observer on the landscape, I can say that the challenges that we're seeing are frustrating as hell. All of us need to have a way to push forward for people to be included in the digital consumption or the new media that we're seeing, but how? I think that's the question that you're asking too, how?
Look, the difficulty is that government didn't keep its own commitment about the rollout of at least subsidized set-top boxes. That ended up in court. And we're now looking at a situation where government, again, being compelled by the court to ensure that there is inclusivity, because we know that a move like the switching off of that analog signal could be one of the significant moves that excludes especially the poor of the country from being able to access television. And we know just how important the role of TV is.
At the same time, we've got to remember, and just to make a remark here, that change comes at a point when it's unexpected and not well received. We may have had the delays around pushing from analog to digital, yes, and there has been a delay and it is frustrating. We need to do that in order to free up the spectrum, which has gone on sale. Centec, ICASA, other stakeholders that have contributed to this consultative process, which the minister has referred to. But if I think about that, if we think about the way COVID impacted us to move, Kathy, now I'm talking across all sectors of society, we were forced to use, if we've had access to them, and this again I'm talking in a very generalized way, access to them, to move to a more remote way of working, but also to use tools that helped collaborate in a digital world without being person to person. In the same way, if we look at change has to come for people to be onboarded. If you look at the frequency type, the reason why it's important for us to move quickly to digital is that low frequencies versus high frequency. We need, TV is a wonderful opportunity because it's able to reach quite far. I mean, the frequency is, you can operate still on a lower frequency, especially in rural areas. That's great. As we move to digital, as we are able to subsidize this way, I know again it's an expensive exercise and it's one that government is delaying, but it helps if, and I think what I'm starting to think around here is if the role players here, like ETV, DStv, and other channels that have migrated very quickly to digital and switched off analog, are able to transition that way where they're looking at technologies and innovating in our country that allow further reach, aside from set-top boxes. I don't know what that it is yet, but with the increase of AI technologies and the technology that we have in this country, we're able to work out solutions quickly. All I'm saying, Kathy, is that the move for us to move to digital is here, and we will include people. We've got to have a public education about why it's important, but we need to get there. If we as South Africans are going to progress, we have to embrace the change as it comes. Scary, but it's necessary.
All right, Nazareen, thanks for that. And I think you've made the point well that the longer we delay this move, the greater the opportunity cost for so many industries. And we haven't even touched on data and the role that it will play when it comes to the cost of data. We'll leave it there for tonight.